Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Brian from Izzet League EDH, and we are back with Commander Legends spoilers. We are on day 6, and there's a lot more cards in this video compared to the last video. Last video only had a handful, so it was only like 15 minutes long. So we're going to jump right into it as usual. As a quick reminder as well, we are mainly going over the newest cards for Magic in EDH in this set. We're not going over any reprints unless it happens to be a notable reprint worth mentioning. Other than that, though, let's go ahead and get started with today's video. So, first of all, we're going to be starting off with the multicolored cards for the set. We have Nostro, Voice of the Crags. It's a 4-drop Jeskai Commander for 1 generic and Jeskai colors. It's a legendary creature Chimera, and it has 3 power, 3 toughness, and it has the ability tap it. Choose one. X is the number, or choose a mode, I should say. X is the number of spells you cast this turn, and it has 3 modes. First mode says Scry X. Second mode says Voice of the Crags deals X damage to target creature, and third mode says you gain X life. So basically, you have a mode for each color in Jeskai. It shouldn't. It's pretty obvious. It shouldn't really be said if you've played Magic long enough. But this just screams a Storm deck. And it's in Jeskai colors, so it's not that hard to do it either. I don't know. I feel like this is the type of commander that screams toxicity and cancer within a play group. So I'm not too thrilled that a card like this has come out. Of course, I'm not surprised either that this type of card has come out. I wouldn't be surprised if some people got really excited about this type of card as well, because I could definitely see this being some, broken along those type of things. But I'm just not excited to fight against it. That's what I'm just gonna say. But we'll move on to the next card, which is Hans Eriksson. Now, in case any of you are familiar with really old Magic cards, it was called like Akhan's Run or something like that, or I think that was the quote, the flavor text for that card. But Hans Eriksson is a very, very, how should I say, notable figure within Magic lore. And they finally gave him a card. But he is a Gruul commander for 4 mana. He costs 2 generic, a red and a green. He is a legendary creature, Human Scout, has 1 power, 4 toughness, and he says whenever Hans Eriksson attacks, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, put it onto the battlefield tapped and attacking defendant player, or a planeswalker they control. Otherwise, put that card in your hand. When you put a creature card onto the battlefield this way, it fights Hans Eriksson. So in case any of you happen to be confused about what the heck this guy does, whenever he attacks, you reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature, put it on the battlefield, tapped and attacking whoever on Hans Eriksson is attacking. Okay, before it actually goes into before you actually go into declare blockers though for the opponent, if the creature entering the battlefield was a creature that hit the battlefield, assuming it wasn't like something that wasn't a creature basically. It has to fight Hans Eriksson first before you actually go into declare blockers. So just kind of clarifying that real quick. So I think it's a fun, goofy card. It fits very well with his lore. If you're interested in his lore, I'll leave a link to the Magic Historian's video that he made about this card, discussing the lore about that. I thought it was very interesting, very, very cool, in my opinion. But other than that, we'll go on to the next card. So this is going to be the last multicolored card for today, which is Obeka, Brute Chronologist. It is a 4-drop Grixis commander. Has 1 colorless, 1 blue, black, and red. Legendary creature Ogre Wizard, you don't really see many of those, has 3 power, 4 toughness, and only has 1 ability, which says you tap her. The player whose turn it is may end the turn. So it's a very interesting commander because of the fact that it doesn't actually end the turn, or how should I say it? It doesn't guarantee that the turn will end because of the fact that it does say the player may end the turn. if you just use this on an opponent, they could just decide, no, I don't want the turn to end. So, and just make the ability pointless. So how I see this being used is that aside from using it to end your own turn, to override very specific types of abilities. So one way you could potentially take advantage of this, for example, is to use it as a political tool. So let's say it's one player's turn, they do something, but another player responds at instant speed. That's very bad for them. You could then use Obeka's ability to be like, hey, this person over here who's doing something bad to you, you can make it go you can make it go all away if you end your turn. Because for any of you new players out there, ending the turn does get rid of any abilities and spells currently on the stack. So if you put her ability on top of the stack for anything that happened at instant speed, you could use it as a political tool to help end people's turns early, potentially. The only other way you would really want to use this is in a similar manner, but for your own turn, where you could take advantage of this by having a bunch of cards in your deck that say, that have some sort of ability that say yada yada happens, and then at the end of the turn, they get exiled or sacrificed or whatever. Okay, those end of turn effects. Okay, they normally would get rid of like tokens or whatnot. You can use Obeka here to actually exile or end the turn while those triggers are on the stack. So that way you can actually keep your creatures or your permanents around instead of usually having to get rid of them. Those are the type of effects you can take advantage for this. All right, so that is it for the multicolored spells for now. Next up, we'll go on to the black cards for today, starting with Armix, Filigree Thrasher. Armix Filigree Thrasher is a legendary creature, artifact creature golem. He's 3 mana to cast, 2 generic and a black. He has 3 power, 2 toughness, and he says whenever Armix Filigree Thrasher attacks, you may discard a card. When you do, target creature defending player controls gets -X/-X until end of turn, where X is the number of artifacts you control plus the number of artifact cards in your graveyard. And he has partner. So I'm actually really happy about this card, even though I don't play black. I think this is a really good commander for artifact type decks in black, just because of the fact that not only does it care about the artifacts you have in your field, but also care about the artifacts in your graveyard too. So it's okay if your artifacts get blown up because they'll still apply to his ability. Even better, another way you could take advantage of this type of ability is if you go through some sort of mill effect, or some sort of mill strategy within your own deck. You can mill yourself out. Well, not completely, but you can mill yourself, maybe with your opponents as well, and make his removal abilities essentially even more lethal than it already is. So it's a pretty cool commander, and it's only 3 mana to play too, so you're guaranteed to get it out early turn at the very least. So I think it's a pretty dope card. Pretty cool commander. I wouldn't be surprised. And there's already a few other artifact matters type of commanders with partner out there as well. So I'm pretty certain you can easily make a pretty interesting artifact deck with this card. So I don't play black, but I think it's pretty cool. All right. Next up, we have Kumbad Witches, which is a 2 mana mono black creature. It costs a black and a black. It is a human wizard. Has 1 power, 3 toughness, and its ability is you can tap Kumbad Witches to deal 1 damage to any target and 1 damage to any target of an opponent's choice. So it's I don't know about you guys, but I don't think I've ever seen a mono black card do ping. Normally I only see that on red cards or like red blue cards. I don't think I've ever seen a mono black card do that before. And the fact it gives an opponent an opportunity to ping something else as well, I find that, I don't know, this is a very interesting card. I don't know where, aside from like a Rakdos deck where you could give this, you could easily give this Death Touch or something. I don't know. It's just a very strange card. Next up, we have Plague Reaver, which is probably one of the more insane cards so far. It is a 3-drop mono black creature for 2 generic and a black. It's a beast type. has 6 power, 5 toughness, and says at the beginning of your end step, sacrifice each other creature you control. Also says, discard 2 cards and sacrifice Plague Reaver. Choose target opponent. Return Plague Reaver to the battlefield under that player's control at the beginning of their next upkeep. So, essentially, this is the type of card that gets passed around the table because nobody wants this effect to happen to them, so they will use that second effect to discard 2 cards, sack it, and they give it to somebody else instead. Okay. If you choose not to sack it, discard 2 cards and sack it, all your creatures at the end of your turn will get destroyed. They'll get sacrificed. So it's a really cool card. Honestly, I feel like this is, considering the fact it's only 3 mana too, I feel like this is going to be pretty strong. Pretty strong, and it's probably going to be used a heck of a lot in control decks. You're forcing opponents to discard cards, otherwise all their creatures get sacrificed. It gets around protection, it gets around indestructible, hexproof shroud, all that good stuff. So it's a very good card. Like, if you're playing a control deck or some sort of a deck that likes to kill a bunch of creatures, including your own, all the time anyways, this is going to be very, very strong and very annoying for opponents to deal with, because even if they kill it, actually no, never mind, ignore that last part. It's going to be very annoying for people to deal with though. So this is going to be strong. I like this a lot. Next up, we have Tormod himself, the Desecrator. He is a 4-drop mono black commander with partner. He costs 3 generic and a black. He's a legendary creature zombie wizard. Has 4 power, 2 toughness, and says whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token. I find it interesting that it come in tapped. Very cool card though. There's a bunch of cards referring to Tormod himself, but we never actually saw the card for him until just now. I think he's pretty cool. He's obviously going to be very well suited for zombie type decks. There's a lot of cards in black that can easily recur themselves from the grave without needing the help of extra cards. Like, they'll have their own ability to say, like, if you fit a condition, return this creature back to the field, or return this creature back to your hand. That would probably be easiest way, in my opinion, to take advantage of Tormod's ability to get free 2/2 zombies entering the field. Another way, of course, is because it only cares about if cards leave your graveyard. It doesn't care about where it goes, just if they leave. So obviously, graveyard recursion of some form, whether it be like resurrecting a creature onto the battlefield, that will give you zombies. Adding cards from your graveyard back to your hand will give you zombies. Shuffling your graveyard back into your deck will give you zombies. So it has a lot of flexibility in how you want to interact with your graveyard, essentially, to essentially just give you zombies. The only thing you want to keep note of that it says when 1 or more cards leave your graveyard. So even if you say bring 13 creatures back from the graveyard all at once, you will only get 1 zombie. Okay, so it only cares about each instance that creatures come back. It doesn't care how many come back. Okay, so which is important to note. So it's better to bring back 13 creatures individually so you get 13 zombie tokens instead of trying to get 13 creatures back all at the same time, which will only give you 1 zombie token. So important distinction worth noting. All right, so that is it for the black cards. We're going to move on to the green cards for now, starting with Anara Wolvid Familiar. Anara Wolvid Familiar is a 4-drop mono green partner commander. It costs 3 generic and a green. It's a legendary creature, Wolf Beast. Has 4 power, 4 toughness, and says as long as it's your turn, commanders you control have indestructible. Awesome. If not, oh my god. This is like I feel like I don't even have to say much just to show like this is already gonna be strong. On your turn, commanders you control have indestructible. There's so many ways you could abuse this. So many ways. The first thing that comes to mind is the fact that you can easily go with a very combat heavy deck. So if you pair it up with maybe like a white red commander, you can have a Naya based combat based deck. You can also go Teamer to make it basically combat-based decks in general would be very strong with this. Obviously, as well too, the fact that it makes all commanders you control have indestructible, including Anara herself. That makes it super easy to just play board wipes on your turn, regardless of the creature, regardless of your commanders, because then you don't have to worry about your commanders getting blown up, and you just play a bunch of board wipes. I'm smacking the table, so I'm sorry if that loud, but you just keep playing board wipes all the time. Like that's just disgusting. That's insane. I feel like I get the I have a gut feeling she's not going to be as strong as she might appear to be, but for most decks. But I do feel like with the right combination, she can be pretty annoying to deal with, as well, just because of what I just stated, just being able to freely play board wipes without any restraint. All right, next up we have Apex Devastator. This is the card that a lot of people were talking about just like a day or two ago. It is a 10-drop Chimera Hydra creature for 8 generic and 2 green. It has 10 power, 10 toughness, and it only has 1 ability. You cascade 4 times. Like, that's just ridiculous. You get a 10 drop for 10/10, and all it does is cascade 4 times. Like, that's insane. That's insane. If you're playing green, like, it's a green card, so you know you're playing green, so you're gonna have the ramp. So chances are you could probably actually play this, hardcast it too, which is nuts. Cards like Maelstrom Wanderer were already pretty gross themselves, because you can cascade twice and give all creatures haste. So I can only imagine how gross this is gonna be as well. Because even if you whiff 1 or 2 times with the cascades, chances are at least 1 or 2 of those cascade triggers are going to hit something good. So this is going to be a scary card for sure. Next up, we have Court of Bounty. This is help going along with the latest cycle of enchantment cards that let you become the Monarch. So this is the green version of it, where it costs 2 generic and 2 green. It says, when Court of Bounty enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. If you're the Monarch, instead, you may put a creature or land card from your hand onto the battlefield. So this card is just busted. This is probably one of the more busted out of the ones that we've seen so far. Obviously, when it enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. At your upkeep, so basically you have to have an entire turn happen first to see if you're still the Monarch by the time the trigger happens. If you're not the Monarch, you can put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. If you are the Monarch, though, you could put a creature or a land onto the battlefield. So it's just, for 4 mana, it essentially lets you be able to easily cheat out a big creature for free, which is kind of nuts. And you can do that as easily as like turn 4 or 5. Just like, I don't know, imagine putting this and then putting like Vorinclex onto the field by turn 4 or 5. That's crazy. That's gross. That's disgusting. All right, next up for the last green card for the day, we have Rootweaver Druid, which is a 3-drop green creature. Costs 2 generic and a green. It is an elf druid creature. Has 2 power, 1 toughness, and says when Rootweaver Druid enters the battlefield, each opponent may search their library for up to 3 basic land cards. They each put 1 of those cards onto the battlefield tapped under your control, and the rest onto the battlefield tapped under their control. Then each player who searched their library this way shuffles it. So, essentially, assuming that you're playing in a 4-player group, okay, or game, Rootweaver Druid works better the more opponents you have, because even though your opponents are getting 2 lands, you are essentially getting at least 3 lands, assuming you're in a 4-player game, okay? So it's one of those aspects where, yeah, it helps everyone, but it helps you slightly more. And these are the type of cards that I'm actually okay with putting into my decks, just because of the fact that as long as I'm benefiting more than my opponents, it still gives me the advantage, and I'm okay with that, in my opinion. I have an entire deck that has cards like this that really help make the games more fun and interesting. because it helps speed up the game, since like the turns are kind of in a way going faster because we all ramped faster as well. But at the same time, it helps it make me more likely to win as well, because again, I have more advantage from the value from it compared to my opponents. So I actually really like this card. I don't think it's that bad at all. I wouldn't toss it aside as a bad card just because it helps the opponents, because keep in mind, it still helps you more. Anyways, next up, we're going on to the white cards for today. Starting off with... there we go. Arden, Interpret Archeologist, which is a 3-drop partner commander. It costs 2 generic and a white. It's a legendary creature, Core Scout. Has 2 power, 2 toughness, and says at the beginning of combat of your turn, you may attach any number of auras and equipment you control to target permanent or player. This is going to be one of the partner commanders that I think is going to be really cool, just because of the fact that this opens a lot of different kinds of doors you can do. You can go the kind of bestow route. You can go the cursed auras route, where you curse a player. And you can kind of just like pass around the curses to the different players you actually want. There's not a whole lot of effects that do that. So this is definitely going to be one of the cooler ones in my opinion. Like, and of course you can go the more traditional equipment type deck as well. But in my opinion, I think going with like curses would probably be the more fun and interesting type of deck. So I wouldn't doubt it if there's someone out there decides to do something like that. So I'm looking forward to seeing what people do with this card. All right, next up, we have the only other white card for today, Armored Sky Hunter. It is a 4-drop cat knight creature for 3 generic and a white. Cost. It has 3 power, 3 toughness, has flying, and says whenever Armored Sky Hunter attacks, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may put an aura or equipment card from among them onto the battlefield. If an equipment is put onto the battlefield this way, you may attach it to a creature you control. Put the rest of those cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. So, it essentially just lets you be able to dig for equipment. Which, honestly, in a way, like, for example, if you're playing mono white, you can, in a way, see this as a form of card advantage. Okay, it's not card draw, but you can see it as a form of card advantage. Because at the very least, you're digging for cards to put on the battlefield, okay, which helps you get ahead. So even though white still struggles from card draw, getting cards in your hand, it makes up for it from being able to just kind of tutor it onto the field for you. You don't have to draw it in the first place type of way, if that makes sense. So a very good card. It's unfortunate it only works for auras and equipment, because that only works for specific types of white decks. But still a good card nonetheless. So pretty good for white. Not as good as it probably could have been, but still pretty good for white. All right, next up we're going on to the blue cards for today. Starting with Wrong Turn. I think this is an absolutely hilarious card. But it's a 3-drop mono blue instant for 2 generic and a blue. It only does one thing. Target opponent gains control of target creature. I feel like this is going to be really good for those type of decks that gain benefit from other people gaining control or being in control of cards that they don't own. I'll put up there's one that came out earlier from Commander Legends. I forget the name of it already. But there's also a Jeskai card that does that as well. I forgot the name of it too. If I remember, I'll put it up on the screen for you guys to take a look at. But there's a lot of cards out there. Not a lot, I should say. But there's quite a few commanders out there that do have an interest in other players being in control of cards that they don't own. So I feel like this is one of those cards that would fit in those type of decks. Pretty fun for those type of decks too, because then even if you're not playing those type of decks, you can do some kind of cool political shenanigans or this sort of thing. So if an opponent has a creature that's very disastrous for a particular player because they own it, but if you give it to somebody else where it's not nearly as useful because it doesn't synergize with their deck, you can still make use of Wrong Turn here. So it's not the greatest form of removal, but in a way you could use it as removal. So I feel like it's going to be one of those fun janky cards, unless you put in very specific types of decks like I mentioned earlier. So that's it for the blue cards. Last but not least, we'll go into the red cards for today. And there's only 2 red cards for today, so we're pretty much going to be wrapping up the video here. We have so far Eruption. This is following the cycle of cards in Commander Legends so far. There seems to be a 9-drop for each color so far, and this one's the red one. So we have so far Eruption for 6 generic and 3 red mana for 9 mana total. And it says choose any number of target creatures, planeswalkers, and or players. For each of them, exile the top card of your library. Then so far Eruption deals damage equal to that card's converted mana cost to that permanent or player. You may play the exiled cards until the end of your next turn. So essentially, you can target as many things on the field that are planeswalkers, creatures, and players, and just exile a ton of cards off the top of your library. And then until your next turn, you can play them. The next turn part is simply because of the fact you just spent 9 mana, so chances are you don't have any mana left. So it just helps guarantee that you at least have a chance to be able to play them later on for after exiling them. So I think this is actually a pretty good card. You need to obviously, of course, be able to get to 9 mana in the first place to be able to play this. But if your deck is built properly to actually take advantage of this card, this could actually be a pretty strong card. So one thing I do want to note, though, is that you shouldn't really view this card as removal just because it's too random and inconsistent to reliably use this as removal in most cases. I would see this card mostly as a way to get a new hand. So like if you're playing mono red, for instance, and you're struggling to keep a hand, use this as a burst of card advantage for the next turn. And think of the burn mostly as a bonus more than anything else. That's how I would look at it. Otherwise, don't look at it as removal. Just look at it mostly as like kind of card draw for red. Mass card draw for red. But other than that, next up is the last card for the day called Wild Celebrants. It's a 5-drop mono red creature, 3 generic and 2 red. It's a satyr, has 5 power, 3 toughness, and it says when Wild Celebrants enters the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact. So it's pretty tame. There's a lot of cheaper creatures and cards out there that destroy artifacts for like 3 or less mana. So just getting a 5/3 creature out of it that destroys an artifact, in my opinion, is not worth it for Commander, for EDH. Might be nice starting off for a new player for a budget build or something, but in my opinion, there's already better cards out there. So other than that, that's going to be it for today, guys. That is it for, what is it, day 6? Day 6 spoilers. Go ahead, let me know what your thoughts are about the latest spoilers in the comment section down below. Maybe there was a combo or synergy that I may have missed. Let me know and let others know in the comment section. Because remember, you're not the only one who's looking at these things. Other people probably want to see those type of comments as well. So go ahead and leave a comment. If you enjoyed the video, though, please leave a like, subscribe, and hit that bell button. It's the best way I know to upload more videos such as this one. I'll be doing my best to create a video for every single day of spoilers as fast as possible. But aside from that, my name is Brian from Izzet League EDH, and I will see you guys in the next spoilers video. Peace, y'all.